This is TWiT.
So what's the mixed reality briefing Microsoft had? I saw that and I thought, oh, yeah, this was yesterday. I thought, oh, shoot, did we miss a Microsoft event, an announcement?
No.
Big news?
No.
It was a private event. It wasn't even webcast. It was in San Francisco. It was for select journalists and some analysts. And we kind of had heard that it wasn't going to be a huge news event, and it was not. They talked about another new mixed reality headset being available, this one from Samsung. They talked about a company they bought called Altspace VR, which is a social networking virtual reality company that almost went out of business this summer, and I guess Microsoft instead bought them. And what else did they talk about? They talked about... I'm trying to think what else was newsy.
So I watched this thing because I obviously don't value my time. But
Wait,
there was there was an interesting little tidbit from Alex Kipman, I thought.
Oh, you watched it? Sorry,
on.
You watched it afterwards, right?
That's right. He used different language. I'm going to get this probably wrong a little bit, but you know, there is a very big difference between something like a HoloLens, which used to be an augmented reality headset, right, where you can see the world around you. It doesn't block your view. And then there's some kind of an overlay of a field of view that has holograms in it, as we used to call them. And then there's these VR headsets, which is what a mixed reality headset really is. It's VR. Yeah. And VR blocks your view, right? You don't get to see the outside world. Everything you see is transmitted on the inside of that headset. And actually, you have a broader field of view typically than you would with the AR stuff in HoloLens. I think he called those transparent headsets and opaque headsets. I could have that language a little bit off. But he did mention that their goal was to bring those two things together in the future, that they would eventually have headsets that did both. So those are actually, aside from the blocking of the view and not blocking the view, are actually completely different technologies, right? Like I said, like AR versus VR. And I'm going to have to go back and look at this more today because the Google event just happened. But Google, when they showed off AR, talked about the mixing of AR and VR on the phone. And I do sort of feel like Microsoft might have jumped the gun a little bit on HoloLens. Conversely, they're a little bit behind on VR when you think about it. You know, VR has been around in the PC for a while. But that's some future that combine these things, which I would call mixed reality, like this, like actual mixed reality, the mixing of VR and AR, if you will, is an interesting and potentially viable platform for Microsoft on the on the Windows PC, right? That
so was he implying the same, mixing the two in a single view on a single headset, or did he mean connecting to? Because they've shown the scenario where you can connect a HoloLens.
No, he meant a single headset, right? Yeah. No, a single headset. And so I have to think that has really been the goal. You know, I'm sure what they wanted to do was bring HoloLens to the PC, and for whatever reason, technical, cost, whatever, it just didn't make sense. And so it was like, well, what can we do? And these MR headsets are just virtual reality. They do have that one sensor on them so that they can do location sensing without having to put stuff around your house or your room or whatever. But the technology that you're using is just VR.
Yeah. They also called, I don't know if you caught this or if it was in that clip, but he called Windows 10, quote, the first spatial operating system yesterday. That was the first time I've heard him use that language. That's right. Yeah. And the reason they're calling it that is because it has Windows Mixed Reality built into the Fall Creators Update and the not Spring Creators, the original Creators Update, right? I mean, so. Well,
Leo missed this talk from last week, but as we discussed last week, Microsoft being first doesn't always work out for them.
No. Right.
So. Yeah. And that, again, I don't mean to go too far off the side street here, but, I looked at the Apple stuff from a month ago. I looked at the Google stuff today when they start doing AR on the phone. And I think this is where it's going to succeed, Right. And as we talked at the top of the hour, Microsoft's defeat in mobile has these ripple effects, and not being able to have that audience for what to me is the mainstream use of VR, or a more mainstream use of AR. Than what Microsoft is doing with HoloLens is it's a shame, because that's a key piece of the puzzle that they're just not going to have.
Yeah. Right, because they don't have a phone, so they can't do something like ArcCore, ArcKit, right? I mean, they could do. I guess they could somehow maybe do it for other people's phones, using their mixed reality platform.
Right. Microsoft builds apps on iOS and Android. They could build, AR companion apps. Absolutely. And I'm sure they will. Yeah. But, it just doesn't give them that same platform integration thing that they could have had if they had a viable mobile platform.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yesterday's event was mostly the mixed reality event was supposed to be presenting Microsoft's end-to-end solution. I think they were trying to make it clearer for people that this is what we mean when we say mixed reality. And from tweets of people who were there, I was like, yeah, it sounds like they made it clear, but maybe not 100% clear. But some people seem to be
I feel like they did make it clearer. Like they actually did use the term virtual reality. I'd have to go back and watch it again. I guess I could be picky about it. But the other thing that they did, which I thought was okay, was, I've complained a lot in the past about their stage presentations of HoloLens and how the guy will be standing up there on stage and they broadcast this thing where you see holograms all around him. It's this incredible immersive experience. And I've sort of said, well, the experience of using HoloLens is nothing like that. You see holograms through this tiny little, mail slot. So in the demos they did of the VR stuff, you could see like a ghostly image of him sort of green screened over the virtual reality presentation on the screen. And again, you're seeing, a big, broad field of view. But, in VR, that's actually fairly accurate. And I thought that putting him in the middle of it, even though that's not what you see, because obviously it's a first-person view in real life, and you're seeing kind of a third-person view. I thought it was actually a pretty effective way of presenting that information. So, after, I don't know what this is, 3 years of complaining about this or whatever, I mean, okay, that seemed good to me.
Well, there was also some, I can't believe I'm bringing this up, Halo Recruit. So some Halo-related thing that was part of this.
Halo, it's so funny because when Halo came out, it made me queasier than any game in history. And I went back when they did their reboot of Halo, and I got all of them. And the original one made me sick again. The last thing I want to do is put on a headset.
So by the way,
Master Chief.
Please don't be confused.
It's not really Halo, though, is it?
It's not Halo. It's not one of those games. It's not Master Chief either. It's a Halo experience. If you think about, I don't know, a couple of years ago, they did the demo game where alien robot things seem to come out of the wall and they fly around and you kind of, you shoot your gun at them, whatever. That's actually kind of a neat little experience, but it's very limited, right? It's augmented reality, so it works with the world you're in. So the walls of the room will be what they're used to come out of the wall. It's like that. It's just it's a couple of Halo-looking creatures. You can fire, a pretend gun or whatever.
It's a Halo experience like Pizza Hut's a pizza experience.
Very good. It's not like going to Italy, but
okay, got it.
Close your eyes.
Okay.
But it kind of implies, doesn't it, that they're thinking like, how can we make Halo fit into this view we have?
I'm sure there's demand for that, right?
Yeah, right. They can't. But there's no solving the problem that what Leo just described is tenfold true on VR.
That head bob made me queasy.
So sick.
Yeah.
I would never even attempt it.
As you should not.
Well, years ago I tried it was like an Unreal Engine based world game, simple game on, I think it was the like beta version of Oculus Rift. And just walking around that world made me sick to my stomach. I mean, you couldn't do it for more than a couple of minutes. It was awful.
This is still the sticking point on VR. I'm sorry. It's just not. And the nice thing is, you can do about it. Mixed reality or AR doesn't have that issue, it seems. Because you see the real world. For some reason, it doesn't bother me. Yeah.
That's right. If they can ever figure this out, this is going to be the biggest thing in the world. But until they do, we're kind of limited.
I'm kind of done with VR. I just do not see it. I don't see the.
This is good timing for Microsoft then.
Yeah. Thank you. They bought Alt Space VR. What's that?
2007, 2017.
It's going to be the year of VR. Yep.
So
also the year of the laptop.
Yep. And the Linux desktop. Here we go.
I had never heard of Alt Space till this event. But I guess they're big in the social networking VR space.
Yes,
like they're
huge.
The leading platform, or one of the leading platforms.
You could be the leading platform.
I don't know.
It's a tiny.
Well, but we're talking about a niche market here. I think it makes sense to. I'm not saying it makes sense to buy them. I don't know what they paid, but to bring in some form of a community to this is one of the things I think is going to help a lot because. It's going to be a small community, but if they're super active and engaged and whatever, that's kind of what you need. So,
but you know what? What was interesting? What was interesting about the wording on it was Microsoft said, "You know what? Alt Space VR is about immersive communication." So I'm like, okay. So, there are consumer applications of this, obviously, but then they mentioned you can use it for attending yoga classes, comedy shows, blah, blah, blah. But also people just talking to each other and attending meetups and that kind of communication too.
That's right. Yep. So next year, when Frank Shaw does his Build 2018 pre-brief with the press, he'll be doing it with mixed reality. We'll be standing
in your living room. He'll be visiting you.
Yep.
Let's hope that doesn't happen that quickly.
You know this is going to happen.
I know.
I've come to your living room.
As soon as you hear it, you know it's going to happen.
Yep.
Yikes. Yikes, schmikes.
Yeah.